All right, welcome in. We are live. I'm on the road.
You
Lester,
are.
you are in familiar environs, but I am on the road. I am in Portland, and I'll be here all week for a conference. But had to get away. Had to get away after that Sunday night, whatever that was.
I think most of us picked the Texans to win, right?
Right.
It's funny because like week one, they won ugly. We're mad about how they won. Week two, we're mad about how they lost. It's like at the end of the
It's
day,
a
they're
fan
one and
base that
one.
likes to get mad.
Yes, exactly. So the Bears are where we all thought they'd be at this point, 1-1. They didn't get there very pretty, but that's okay.
I think there's something about I tweeted out beforehand, and actually I sent you a GIF before on a text message, and I was just like, "Please don't embarrass me." Like
Yeah.
this is like where I'm at right now. It's just like, please don't embarrass me. But and I'm not sure that they did. I think the offensive line sure did. And we'll talk about that in the show.
Oh,
But I think that having the ball in the fourth quarter, in the 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, with a chance to win the football game, that's what you can ask for. Like I mean, on the road against a team that's supposed to do really good things, and I mean, I, there's a way to spin this in a
yeah.
really negative, sad sack direction. There's a way to spin this in a really positive direction of building, particularly when you look at the schedule that's coming up. And I just, I mean, it is what it is, but it's a very interesting spot to be in.
Like the whole time I'm watching, right? Obviously, I'm upset. Like, come on, what are we doing here with this, with the offense, with the O line? But then I'm like, it's a one score game. It's like they're right there. The defense is playing great. I mean, again, we talked about last week how like a ball bounces this way or that way. That's the difference in the game. Kyler Gordon missed a pick by like a centimeter, right? So it's like there are these little instances where you watch and you're like, the ball bounces slightly different this way, that's a dub. And it's like, yeah, we could spin it, but at the end of the day, they're 1-1. This is kind of what we thought they'd be. And there's some winnable games in the schedule, but they still got to get some stuff figured out here with the offensive line. And like you said, we're gonna definitely harp on that during the show because oh my god, there's a for some reason I am the anti O line guy at the site. There's a guy that keeps going in there saying, "You're the guy that said this," and it's always something like negative, like I'm against the O line, like I'm all about the skill guys, and I'm like, "Are you sure I'm the guy you're thinking of?" Because I'm pretty sure I write a weekly column breaking down O line play, and we talk. We have a segment called Trent's Tribute. I'm like, "Are you sure I'm the guy you're thinking I'm at?" I don't know. It's very strange.
Yeah, that's that. Was that 50 Cent? Me? Like what?
Yeah,
What are you talking
I,
about?
I
That
yeah, I
can't be
think
the guy that
he's
you're talking about.
I think he's got me mixed up with someone else because I don't know. Oh well.
I mean, I don't know who at the site you could be confused with. I mean, you're the boss, so I'm not sure what that's all about. Now, someone brought to my attention that it's starting to look like as I get a little bit more gray hair in my beard, it's starting to look like maybe we could be cousins because we both have the glasses and the hat and the I mean, it just kind of looks like maybe I'm turning more into Lester as the
Yeah.
years go on. So I don't know. Like you've got like black, like a black beard, right? Black and then gray.
Yeah. The
Mine's more
gray's the
brown
rate
and
the
gray.
gray is relatively newish. Obviously, as you get older, the gray pops. But yeah, I mean, I should trim it one of these days. I just, I don't got time, man. I'm especially in football season. I ain't got time to groom myself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The I got to tell you, the sunlight. I get out in the sunlight and it hits it the wrong way. I mean, whoa! It like lights up like a Christmas tree. Not a fan. Not a fan.
Nah,
We're
man.
talking about new. The last couple of years is when the gray has come in, and I don't know. I dealt with losing the hair on the top of my head, and just shaved it. I was like, yeah, this
Yeah,
works. This is fine. And the gray stuff's kind of bothering me a little bit,
that's all
but
right.
time waits for nothing.
Distinguished. It's a distinguished look. It's wisdom. It's what I tell everyone. It's because I have the
Well,
wisdom.
hard earned watching this football team, I think is what.
Exactly.
All right, you want to hop in and do a podcast?
Yeah, let's get this going.
All right. Welcome to Bear and Balance. I'm Jeff Berckes. On the other side of the screen is Lester A. Wiltfong Jr. Lester, the Chicago Bears, went down to Houston. They came back empty-handed with a loss, 19-13. How'd you take in the game?
I mean, it's prime time Chicago Bears. So right there, were thinking, yeah, this is going to be bad. I mean, there was a lot of people out there, that were going into it, with pre-made grief. They're expecting the worst because prime time. I think then after the game, of course, there was some people tweeting. I think it might have been Robert Mays or Greenberg, one of those big time media Chicago guys that works for like a bigger publication. They made a joke that they feel they've seen this game their whole life. I mean, the way things happen there. Again, it's defense keeping them in it, offense not doing enough. At the end of the day, they have a chance, but they fall just short. So it was rough, but like we kind of said on the pregame show a little bit, they're 1-1. I mean, this team is where I think most fans expected them to be. We'll see what happens. Colts coming up this week, which is a game they should win. So we'll see what happens there.
Before the game, I was scrolling, different stuff, reading different articles, and I get The Athletic. I subscribe to The Athletic. They have some good stuff in there, so I do subscribe. And I get the Pulse, the Daily Pulse. And it's just I understand. I've written things and I have taken some shortcuts and I have used words that I probably shouldn't have. I get it. Like I get what happened here, but I took a screenshot. I highlighted where it said the Texans could announce themselves as a legit Super Bowl contender with an easy win tonight. And so I posted it. I go, a what now?
Yeah.
And I did, because one, I understand that it was a conditional phrase. For all the people that were popping in my Twitter were saying, well, he's not predicting it. He's saying if this, yeah, I know. I understand what it is. But one, the term easy win means something very specific. It wasn't like with a convincing win, with a dominating performance, or like, you could use a lot of adjectives there to get across your point. When you say easy win, generally that's like you've outclassed this other team. They don't deserve to be on the field with you. Easy win means something specific to me. And so I didn't really like the inclusion that they were putting that on the table, that the Bears were just going to come in. They're going to be this cupcake team that the Texans were going to beat up. Because one, Lester, it is September. And we do this every September where we've worked the whole offseason trying to basically predict. This is why I don't do this stuff. Let's go through the games. What do you think about the Bears traveling to San Francisco? I don't know. Are they going to have all their guys? What do you think about when the Rams come to town? Who is the Rams, Sean McVay? I don't know. Half their team's on IR now. Maybe we don't need to predict every individual game. But you talk about things in the aggregate. Here's what I see on paper. Here's what I think they're going to do. In terms, here's how I think it sets up, because some of the teams with a lower over under are earlier in the schedule, and some of the tougher teams with an over under are later in the schedule. So that fits well with a team that's going to develop over time. Those are the things I think you can say with confidence, before a season. But I don't like to go individually and talk about that. But September football is what it is. Like, it could be wonky. You've got 2-0 teams that are not going to make the playoffs. You've got 0-2 teams that, are, the Ravens are 0-2. Who are going to have the Ravens at 0-2, right? And so I don't like the idea of, one, saying anybody's an easy out this early, particularly a Bears team that looked really good on defense. And two, I don't at all agree with talking about legit Super Bowl contenders in September. I thought that was an insane thing to say. So I just kind of posted it up, and some people ran with it in a different direction than I thought they were going to. But overall, like, I just wanted to see how they matched up against a team that looked like they were legitimate competitors.
Yeah.
And I think overall, like, the defense came to play. I mean, Nico Collins is a monster. We know CJ Stroud is really good. And other than that, one touchdown drive, like, and super long field goals being bombed from, halfway down the field. Like, I don't understand this kicker. They need to randomly select him for steroids testing today, because that guy was insane. But, the defense held up, and they gave this offense a chance to win it at the end.
Yeah, Stroud has gone like 235 some odd passes without an interception. He had a few near picks in the game. He had a few deflected balls where, if the Bears were a little more aware, I mean, some of those would have bounced way high in the air. You have no idea where that is. So, but like, it bounced right next to the lineman. So like, if he's looking up, just happened to be looking up the right direction, he gets a pick. We talk about the Kyler Gordon thing. I mean, that's a centimeter away from being an interception. He had a couple of other ones. I mean, Sanborn had one earlier where he had a hand of the ball and it was a tip drill. So So, the Bears had their hands active. They were playing active defense. They got a few sacks. The problem was the Texans had a pretty good defensive game plan as well. That wasn't helped out much by what the Bears offered up front on the offensive line.
I thought the Sanborn tip, and we'll talk about our guy Jack in a little bit, but the Sanborn tip, that one is a ball that usually gets intercepted. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd say like 50% of the time that's going to get intercepted. That's going the other way. It was up there a long time. It was in the middle of the field where you've got a safety who can run underneath it. Like that was a lucky result for Stroud in that. And I'm not, Caleb's had some lucky tip balls that didn't fall into the opponent's hand. I'm not saying it doesn't go both ways, but that one I think could have gone. The one that was at the line of scrimmage, and you say that like, oh, the lineman is aware, and it was Billings, our guy Billings,
Yeah.
and he was the one that was right. And his reaction was, I'm not even gonna look for the ball. I'm just gonna block. Like he just like engaged in a block with an offensive lineman because he's like, maybe someone will catch this and I will have a block to get this guy off of him. He didn't even look. It was hilarious. That is such a 355-pound decision by our guy Billings.
Yeah, what's he gonna do if he catches it? What's he gonna do? I mean, that would have been remarkable. That would have been the meme. That would have been the gift. That would have been just like that tractor trailer play back in the day with the Jags. Same exact thing. If Billings ever gets a chance to get the ball, oh my God, I would lose it on Twitter.
You'd be looking to hand it off. Yeah. The old clip of trailer's like, hey, take it. Yeah, I love it. All right, well, let's get into speaking of Billings. Let's get into the Trench tribute, and no messing around. I'm going right to it. For me, it's Andrew Billings again. I think that he's just I liked him so much last year. He was I remember thinking like, this is a good football player. I'm happy that the Bears signed him. I think he's going to be better than people think. People don't talk about nose guards very often. So, whatever. He probably won't flash, but he's going to be a really good underrated signing. And then he just came out and just hair on fire and was awesome last year. Earned that extension. It's just a really good story for a position a lot of people don't like to talk about very often. And here he is making a difference. And he's on fire again early in the year. So he's got his legs fresh. I think that's got to be a focal point that they have to keep this guy fresh throughout the year because he can be a difference maker. Try to do what you can to make sure that this lasts into December because he did fade a little bit towards the end of the year last year, and that's pretty common for that position. They kind of slow down a little bit, especially when the track gets a little different, and so I'm curious to see if they can manage his reps a little bit better. But on fire once again. So for me, Trench tribute Billings.
Yeah, I had Billings last week, and then I'm watching the game today, and of course I can't go O-line, right? Because there were just too many problems there.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the defensive line, and again, I'm just saying, man, I'm going Billings. This is like through 2 weeks, Billings has now been between the two of us 3 of our 4 Trench tributes because I got Billings again. 40 some odd snaps. Like you said, I want to see that come down. It was like close to 70% of the snaps again, which is. You look at the number, you're like, okay, let's get that closer to 50. He's your nose guard. I think they're going to eventually work in Zach Pickens. I think it'll be crucial if Zach Pickens can become a guy. If he's a viable reserve, I think that's going to really, really benefit the D-line in a whole. But just at 2 tackles, right? But down by the goal line, right? When Cam Akers comes going through the hole, and Billings did nothing but just stand there with his mass, and Akers kind of ran into Billings' face. And then the ball popped out because Billings is a rock. So that was a great way to get a forced fumble. There was no peanut punch. It was just, I'm a giant man. You run into me, ball pops loose. So, real stout in the middle of the D-line. He's hard to move. It's got to be Billings, man. I love that guy. And look at his career, right? This is what the Bears like his 3rd or 4th team. He spent some time on a practice squad early in his career, and then he's finally found a home. You got a nice deal from Ryan Poles. Kudos to Billings for making the most of his career.
Yeah, we've been around cheering for this team for a long time. There's guys like this that come along and have a spark and become kind of fan favorites, and they're really fondly remembered. And then in a few years, you'll look back and you'll look at his Pro Football Reference page and be like, Andrew Billings only played for the Bears for 4 years or, whatever his career ends up being. It's like, how is that possible? I remember him making plays forever. I thought he'd have 7, 8 years there, right? There's guys like this that'll happen where they have this real great peak. And it's always rough when Chicago lets someone go and they have that peak somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the one that's always a little bit frustrating. But it's fun when you get a guy that comes in and sort of flourishes just based on, this is a better fit for this player, or you catch him at the right time of his career. It's just a value proposition that the Bears are willing to take. Whatever it is, he really seems like he's going to be one of those guys. And as a show that leads off every show talking about the trenches, certainly we love our nose guards. So it's fun for us to be able to talk about him when he makes plays. But the opposite of a nose guard, I don't know what's the opposite of a nose guard. It's probably a kicker. The
Maybe. Yeah.
but maybe the most the flashiest. How about not in terms of physical stature, but in terms of flashiness? Let's talk about the quarterback position, the most important position on the field. Caleb Williams finished the day 23 of 37 for 174 yards. He had no touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Ran the ball 5 times for 44 yards, including a 24-yard run. He was sacked 7 times for 40 lost yards. So overall, big picture, Caleb's night, go.
It was rough. I mean, I think he admitted it. He has left some plays in the field, but much like the first week when I went back and kind of watched it again, I'm like, okay, it's not as bad as I thought on the initial watch. I kind of got the same vibe. I didn't get a chance to go through all 22 yet, but going back to the TV copy, you kind of see some things. You're like, yeah, there's some things there. Again, I think he's amped up a little bit, like some of these missed shots downfield, because he was pretty good at the deep ball and the intermediate ball in college. That wasn't a question mark coming in, so that's not just going to go away from him. So he just got to tighten things up. I think he may be rushing those throws a little bit. Part of it could be he's just, I don't want to get to the seeing ghosts thing because, this is week 2 of him, but there's part of that there where he's just not quite sure what he's seeing in front of him as far as protection goes. And that's an issue here. But the fact that he's able to kind of go through his reads, when he's not pressured, he seems to be making the right call here. And look, the first pick, they talked about it on the broadcast. That's a glorified punt. It was 3rd and 15. He knew he had to chuck it up there and make a play. It happens. I mean, he was off target on a few other plays. The other pick was just a bad ball. He had a couple of the bad balls, but rookie, right? He's going to have these problems. I thought he showed some toughness. Obviously, 7 sacks. I mean, sack watch is going to suck this week. I mean, I have broken down a lot of bad sack games. Of obviously Justin Fields one with the Browns. There was one a few years ago where I can't remember the quarterback. I think it was Cutler, where the Niners just obliterated him. And there's just so much. Just it's so time consuming breaking down these plays, but it's going to be a rough one. But overall, he's playing like a rookie should be playing.
Yeah, we're going to have to send you some Red Bull or something to make sure that you have enough energy to be able to get through the 7 sacks. I do think some of them are pretty obvious.
Yes.
I do think there are a couple of them that you're going to be able to pin right away.
I noticed that watching today. I'm like, okay, that's not going to be as bad as I thought.
It's not hard. I think you're going to credit Caleb with at least 1, probably 2 is what my sense is. But I'm curious, as always, to read and see how you break things down. I don't actually think there's much of a sacks happen this week. I think that you're going to be able to attribute, some blame here. You're going to be able to
blame is going to be spread for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It was brutal. It was brutal. I was curious about, the plan coming in against D'Amico Ryans, who's known to be a really clever defensive coordinator. I mean, he's the head coach, but he's still calling plays for the Texans. This guy really understands defense. That's what he's shot up the ranks. He was a professional for a ball player for a number of years. I couldn't quote how many years he played in the league, but he was around for a while, and he's already a head football coach, and he's 40 years old. Like that doesn't just happen. Like there's a reason that this guy's really, really smart at this stuff. They're gonna surprise some people because they have this ability on defense to be creative and confuse a rookie quarterback making his second start, his first on the road. Like these are, if this was any other team, if this was any other franchise that you were talking about, you could very dispassionately talk about the facts and not worry too much about it being your favorite football team and the quarterback that you've got a lot invested in, we certainly have a lot invested in the success of Caleb Williams. But if you just look at it from those facts, like this was a tough matchup coming in for Caleb Williams.
That is
And,
a very, very good defensive coordinator, like you said. I mean, like when the Bears played the Texans in the Hall of Fame game, I started digging into obviously the Texans a little bit. I didn't really know much about D'Amico Ryan's the coach until this year, and he's a good football coach. I really like
absolutely.
what he's building there. That's a good program. He obviously knows his stuff, and he's. I kind of want to see the Texans on Hard Knocks next year, right? I think that would be a fun team to kind of see the inner workings of. I wonder if they have like how the Bears have the 1920 football drive. I wonder if there's some Texans stuff. I would like to learn more about what Ryan's is doing with that program. But yeah, it's tough. What was he blitzed like 40% of the time? He got blitzed, so. He was attacking Caleb. He wanted to make Caleb, see a lot of different things, and it was he fooled him on a few.
Yeah, and I know this is not something people want to hear, but this will likely be good for Caleb in the future. It's not good for him now. I'm sure he's hurting physically today, and I'm sure that he's ego is hurting a little bit with how he was not able to handle some of these things. But I think in the long run, the more that you face these really good defensive coordinators and you figure out like, oh, okay, I've now seen this, right? That mental part of the game. As long as you learn from that, that's only going to help you in the future. But I think that I want to move on to our tweets because I have one that involves Caleb and I wanted to read that. So we're just going to transition over into our tweets. So this is Nate Tice. He's at Nate Tice. He writes for Yahoo. He was at the Ringer the Ringer and the Athletic Football Show, not the Ringer, with Robert Mays. But he says Caleb Williams obviously didn't have a good night, but the fact that the Bears are letting him have full controls of protection as a rookie on the road in his second career game is a very good thing and one silver lining. And I think that's they gave him the whole plate.
Yeah.
They gave him everything and said, you're the guy. Like you're going to run this offense. And so the fact that it's not all coming together all at once shouldn't be particularly surprising because everything's new for everybody, right? Shane Waldron, who on this offense knows Shane Waldron's offense, right? It's like Travis Homer. And that's why Travis Homer's on the field, right? That's the guy that knows it, right?
Yeah.
That's the guy that knows the offense. No one else does. It's new for everybody. It's what DJ Moore is probably fourth or fifth different scheme. Keenan Allen's coming over after a long stint in with the Chargers. It's Rome's rookie year. It's Cole Kmet's first year in this system. It's the offensive line. They're all coming together. This is the first time this offensive line has played together. There's new pieces there, right? So, those things do take time. You've got the reduced preseason. There's a lot of things to think about what September football is. But I thought that this was a really interesting point from Tice, who does a lot of stuff really well, but obviously he has a background as a quarterback. So, when he talks about quarterbacks, I listen a little bit closer. And, he sees it. He sees that he's got full control here, and he's talking positively about his eyes are in the right place. He's making the right decisions. He's making calls. It's just more reps. He just needs more time on task to be able to get to where he needs to be.
Yeah, I like how you said his eyes are in the right place. That's something that Tice has talked about. And look, if you're on social media enough, you're going to go to some of these accounts, and Tice is a big one, obviously, you go to. But a lot of these quarterback guys that kind of are known for that, that kind of break down the film, they all kind of say the same thing, that it's different this time as Bears fans because, we're used to, right? Okay, here we go again. The rookie quarterback struggling, but these guys are saying, look, it's different this time because he's making the right reads. It's just not working for him yet. That happens with a lot of rookies a lot of times. They will get there eventually, but like you said, the fact that he's got the whole thing in front of him, they said, hey, here's the keys. It's your offense. Run your offense. And look, as a rookie, I'm sure he's going to make some mistakes. I'm sure when he goes back, looks at the film, they're going to tell him, hey man, in this instance, because of this look, you slid the line the wrong way. I'm sure that's happened a couple times. Those I play in the game last night where I'm watching, I'm like, why did the line go that way? It seemed like that post snap, the Texans did something where I think maybe he confused Caleb a little bit. So that's going to happen. That happens to the best of them, not just rookies. It happens to everyone. I mean, that's like we always say, they're paid to make plays too. Those guys is a very well coached team. They disguise some of their blitzes, but the fact that Caleb has the keys to the entire offense at this point, 2 games in, I'm not sure we've seen that in Chicago ever.
No, not at all. And I think that it's if you want to freak out, if you want to spin into negative town, like I understand, like fandom can be emotional. I'm not going to tell you what to do. For me, it just feels close. I don't know how else to describe it. And it feels like they're very close. And if you look at the schedule, it gets pretty soft. The next 4 opponents haven't won a game yet. And then there's the bye week, right? So if you just kind of focus on what the next 4 weeks looks like, they're going to go up against teams that are not as talented, teams that are struggling. The Colts are what they are. I think the Bears have more talent on the field. I think that the Bears can go in and they can win that football game. They're gonna host the Rams, who are beat up. I mean, half their team is injured right now. They're gonna host the Panthers, who just benched Bryce Young.
Man, what is happening in Carolina?
2 games. They just benched Bryce Young for Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton's not a long-term answer. What are they doing in Carolina? Like, I mean, I saw some sky is falling stuff on Twitter today. It's not like just hold on, stay the course. Let's get some more data. Let's figure this out. I'm not hitting the panic button yet, so hopefully none of you are either. What about you? Your Twitter comment for the week?
So they're playing obviously on the road, Sunday Night Football. Very loud environment. It was a pretty rowdy crowd there. And Olin Kreutz during the game tweeted out, we all know Olin, right? Stop running outside left. Tackles are laid off the ball with silent count. And then Kyle Long, another former Chicago Bears offensive lineman, and they're not looking at their target pre-snap. So as we're watching games, like lately, the big thing that we always see is it seems like the tackles move a little early, right? That's like the big talk about the NFL officiating, or like, are they moving early? No, it's just that way the eyes perceive it, because they're moving like it's just a split second as the ball snaps, because they know the snap count, right? So it just seems like they're getting off early. They're not on the road in that environment. They don't have that luxury, right? So they're coming off the ball mostly late. It's either a silent count or they have one eye on the ball, right?
Right. They're looking back down towards the ball.
Yeah.
So that they can see it snap, because they can't hear it, right?
Yeah.
So they're lined up and they're going to look this way, but who they're blocking is, you can see it by camera, they're over there, right? So they're down, they're looking this way, but they have to get their eyes back here. So it's a tough task,
especially on these reach blocks, on some of these outside zone plays where Olin was saying, stop running outside, because that's a tough block. I mean, you get on your track, you're for Braxton Jones, for example, he's on his track, he's going left. He has to get to him and either reach him and wall him off so that he gives the running back a crease, or just take him, wash him all the way to the sideline. Either way, it's a tough when you don't know where you're going, and then you're facing Will Anderson and Daniel Hunter, 2 of the best edges in the game today. It's just rough. And I talked about in my keys of the game last week, the Colts, they had their most success in the ground up the middle. Now, look, maybe the Bears didn't trust Coleman Shelton, Nate Davis, Tevin Jenkins, they're up the middle. But I'd much rather go up the middle against Mario Edwards Jr. than try and run outside and get the edge, in a hostile environment when you got Hunter and Anderson out there. So there wasn't enough up the middle. I thought the Bears game plan, I wasn't really happy with what they did, how they attacked in the run game.
I mean, it's an excellent point, even just from the fact that crowds can matter. And particularly in environments like that, where I know they had the open roof, but it is a dome, right?
Yeah.
So those are generally a little bit louder, and you can influence what the offense can do when you have that loud cheering. And if you're not adapting on the offensive play caller side, like that's just sort of a lack of awareness of what you're asking your players to do. I think it's an excellent point from 2 guys that did this. Like they know,
they would know, right?
Right? They know quite well. I mean,
Yeah.
Olin wasn't ever a tackle and had to look in, but he certainly knows that that's a thing. And Kyle, played tackle for. I mean, he might be able to hear the snap count, maybe, but he's also, if he's playing guard, that's not quite as big of a deal as it is if you're playing tackle, because you're all the way out there. Like say, tackle's always about negotiating space anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really excellent point. And I'm somewhat over the years like crowd noise, crowds, they can't influence the game that much. That is one thing where they definitely can. And the false starts, which showed up big time here.
4 of them, right? They had this week. Yeah.
Wow.
Terrible.
Wow. And I'll just say this, Texans fans. I mean, there's some Texans fans in the Twitterverse that maybe seemed a little bit rude, but that's okay. Every fan base has those. But for the most part, like really passionate fans for a fan base that hasn't had a lot of success lately. Obviously, last year they really caught on, and but they were at the Hall of Fame game. Andre Johnson was getting in there, and then they were at the game. Met a few of them, like really passionate. They came to represent, and so that looks like a pretty interesting and strong fan base. So good for them for coming out, supporting their team, and I think influencing that game, because we talk about Caleb's struggles in this game. A lot of times it's just because you're starting off 1st and 15
Yeah.
because the Bears are making a penalty, right? And that really is a reflection of that crowd noise. So good on them. That's the nicest thing I'll say about them, and then we'll meet them again in 4 years. All right, let's move on to caught up in a numbers game. So this is our stat of the week category. I think you had something related to the
Yeah.
offensive line.
My number this week is 2.5. And it's relating to what I just talked about, how running outside. So 2.5 is the yards per carry of the Chicago running backs this season through two games. That's obviously
That doesn't seem
bad.
very good.
3 yards in a cloud of dust I'll live with, but if I'm not getting 3, it kind of throws that out the window. So 2.5 yards per carry. That's 33 rushes, 82 yards. There's been a lot of talk about the pass protection, right, through 2 weeks for the Bears. But look, the offensive line has been bad in the run game as well. They're not making any movements here. I have some questions with when they're working up to the second level. I'm not sure what their aim point is. I'm not sure if the right guy is blocking the right guy. And, it's a problem here. And we've been talking about O-line for a while now. And look, we were both hopeful. I think we kind of talked ourselves a little bit into it a little bit this year. We're hoping Nate Davis would have bounced back. Obviously, we found out early that's going to be a problem. There was some issues there early in the offseason. Ryan Bates was their swing this year. Okay, he's on IR now. Coleman Shelton was serviceable with the Rams. He wasn't a bad center, but he wasn't a guy like, oh yeah, he's definitely going to come in and really solidify that position. He's a pro. He's fine. He's serviceable. Tevin Jenkins had some injuries throughout the years, and then we thought they were going to find at tackles, but this week, I don't think anyone did a good job necessarily in the run game.
No, I mean, you want to see that number particularly for running backs, obviously above 4, but if it's closer to 5 yards a carry, I mean, 5 yards a carry is a fantastic year, particularly with volume. But like if you're at like 4.6, 4.7 yards per carry, that's good, because that also reflects like that you've hit some explosive gains. You're eliminating some of those tackles for loss. I mean, Khalil Herbert's really good at this. This is why I like Khalil Herbert so much. Some people don't agree with me, and that's fine. They are wrong. Khalil Herbert is a fantastic runner of the football, but why he is good is that he really eliminates those negative runs, and then he also has the ability to have those explosive runs. So I'm curious. I don't know. I've certainly watched DeAndre Swift plenty of times in his career. I don't know that he's a guy that reduces or eliminates those negative runs quite as well. I think he's susceptible to getting, popped behind the line of scrimmage and not being able to make that first man miss. That's rough, because it's like a sack. A tackle for loss is pretty similar to a sack, and it puts you behind the sticks. And he certainly has that ability to be an explosive runner. Obviously, he just hasn't been able to break out of anything there. I mean, he had the pass play, but just not as a runner yet. So hopefully that can get going, because the running game has been a strength, relatively speaking, I guess, for this offense the last couple of years, and that helps a young quarterback. A good running game helps a young quarterback if you can stay on schedule, if you can move the sticks and get some explosive runs. That's only going to help him. So mine is about the punter, because I didn't talk about the punter at all last week. So
I knew it was coming. That's okay. We expect it.
So we talked about a little bit like how we should evaluate this, and so I have been trying to put some actual numbers to this. I'm using some publicly available data, basically trying to tie what the expected result of a punt is, depending on where you're at, where the original line of scrimmage is at. The hard thing is like sometimes you get a penalty, and then that line of scrimmage is the resulting line of scrimmage for the opposition is impacted because of that. I think that after 2 games of doing this, I'm certainly no expert. After 2 games of doing this, you go with it and you say it's not just the punter; it's the punting unit. So if you're drawing a flag, that is a good thing. If you're committing a penalty, that's a bad thing, and those things are reflective of that field position. But Tory Taylor's 40 yards, so the number's 40 yards of field position gained over expectation in last night's game. So that's pretty good over 6 punts. It translates maybe not to an eye-popping number, but it's like 1.2 expected points suppressed overall. But these are close games, and if you're going to have these back and forth defensive battles, and he can produce more of those flip the field punts, if he can produce more of those pin punts, those add up. And overall, he had 3 good punts. He had 2 punts that were right on average, and he had 1 bad punt. So 3, 2, 1 for those 6 punts, and that's not bad, right? It's because overall you can't just pick out the one bad one and say, he's terrible, right? Like that's not how any of football works. You can't do that with the specialists either. But overall, looking at this so far, he has been he has been positive in his part of this. The penalties in the first game did take him to a negative number if you count the field position based on a couple of the Bears penalties that were added on, and I'm going to, because I think it's all going to even out in the end, right? So overall on the year, he is in the positive territory. He is doing better than the average punter. Trenton Gill was doing much worse than the average punter last year, and so it is a gain. It isn't it is a benefit to the Bears right now. I'll keep tracking it all year. I'll put up a visual at some point when I'm happy with how it looks. But right now, I can say that I think he's having a positive impact to the game. And last night, he was able to save the Bears 40 yards of field position.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely flipped the field a few times. So a few nice punts there. I think he had 2 inside the 20. But they talked about it in the broadcast how that's he made a couple kicks and they're like, yeah, that's why you draft a punter in the 4th round. He brings that kind of boot. His directional stuff is coming along. I can't wait to see when he hits that wedge shot, right, where it kind of just bounces and takes the correct bounce. We haven't really seen that yet. I mean, we saw it a little bit in camp. It's there. It's in his bag. It's something he'll pull out when he has to. But it's I do find it kind of odd that after he was punted, obviously Caleb had the joke, right, where he cracked the joke about how he's not going to punt much. He's punted quite a bit here through 2 weeks, which is we're fans of Tory Taylor, but I don't want to see him punting very often. I want to see him maybe 1 or 2 a week is all I want to see.
I was going to say I will grade 3 punts a week. That sounds great. Six is I don't want 6 a week. So hey, we got a new sponsor. We got a new partner that we're partnering with for this year, and I'm in Iowa, so we're not eligible. But Lester, I've already offered my services as an Underdog fantasy consultant, and you said you were going to take me up on that.
I am definitely going to take you up on that because I know when you did the stuff a couple years ago where you had the show on every Sunday, man, I tuned in every week. I definitely made some. I'm not betting big money, but I made a little something here and there, so it was kind of fun. So let's get into this Underdog stuff. I mean, it is the greatest time of year again. Obviously, football is back. It is here to stay until February. Over 1 million fans across 33 states got in the game last year by making picks on Underdog. Signing up with Underdog is smooth and easy. I especially like using our mobile app. And this week, I think we'll see what stats they have listed for Caleb Williams, because I think he's due. The Colts are they're not that good. I think this is the week I'm gonna put a little something on Caleb Williams here. So making picks on Underdog is really straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head over to Underdog's simple to use mobile app or underdogfantasy.com. Sign up with our promo code CITY, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy promo code CITY to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer, you must be 18 years old, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates, which is why you're not eligible, but I am. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org in Arizona. 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342 in New York. Call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 4676. Let me do it again. 467-369. Underdog Fantasy. Let's go.
The beauty is not only can you bet for your Chicago Bears, maybe bet some overs as they're due against that struggling secondary for the Colts, but you can bet against the Packers. It's a beautiful thing. Prop bets all over the place. Gotta love it. All right, we're going to take a quick break. After this, we will get to everybody's favorite segment, the Three Bears. Stick with us. All right, Lester, Three Bears. I think we might have some overlap because this just felt like a game where we might be on the same page because I think there's a couple guys that stuck out here. So, hot bowl of porridge. Where did you go with this one?
Strong side linebacker Jack Sanborn. Look, he only had 11 snaps, right, this week. I mean, he played more than last week, but only out there for 2. So he played a little bit more in base, obviously. In 11 snaps, he had 2 tackles, a tackle for loss, a sack, and a pass defense. I mean, that's pretty much, 11 snaps. He had all those numbers. So that's filling the stat sheet. He's a good football player. I mean, it's always fun to see him out there because, he has the neck, right? He's like this old school looking linebacker. He's a local kid, obviously Lake Zurich. So it's kind of fun to see him play. And it's neat that he's on our favorite football team.
Yeah, I think this is where I thought we'd have the overlap. I had Jack Sanborn as well. The Jack in the Box really coming to work here early on. Had the tip pass, which I thought was great. Again, I think 50% of the time that's an interception. You just get that big paw up there, make a play. And honestly, like that play looked open to me. Like that was going to be a nice little hitter, and he was able to break it up. So even just the breakup was huge. But give your teammates a chance to run under that. That was fantastic. Love the sack, love the TFL, just love the energy. I love the shout out from Collinsworth. I don't know quite what Collinsworth was talking about with the when they want an edge and they want to bring him off the edge. Like that's not who he is, but he certainly delivered there. And I like I say local guy, but I also think that UDFA that comes in and steps into a role and plays well. It's just one of those things that fans just kind of glom onto. We created a Jack Sanborn shirt last year. I wore that not too long ago. I think I wore it for the first game actually, just because I like it and I like Sanborn. So love it when he pops and makes some plays. On the other side of this, I think this one's pretty easy too. We might have some overlap here for the cold bowl of porridge. What'd you have?
I'm going to give it to we can go some other ways here, but I'm going to go with the guy in charge of the O-line. That's offensive line coach Chris Morgan. What is he doing with this franchise? I mean, he obviously survived the cut, right? When they got rid of the entire Getsy staff, he stuck around, and we had questions what he was doing last year. Last year, I was concerned. Okay, are some of these issues with Getsy or with Morgan? Because some of the stuff with the run game, with the way they block, that's not really the OC. That's the position coach. We're seeing it again here. So what is Chris Morgan doing? What does he bring to the table that I'm just not aware of? Because I'm watching a team when the Texans rush 5, the Bears should be able to pick that up. Okay. Like I said, sometimes could be Caleb sliding him the wrong way, but I also see sometimes where his guys are a little too aggressive, where they're looking for work too quick, or they're pinching the inside gap a little too quick. And then here comes the blitzer. If you're bringing 5, there's no excuse for that to be picked up. I already talked earlier about how some of the stuff where they're going to second level, like some of the angles seem off. Just again, what's the meme? What do you do here? What would you say you do here, Chris Morgan? I want to know.
I think that's a great selection. I didn't go that direction, but I went with the players. But I think that there's got to be a lot of questions here, and there's a lot of questions because the Twitter timeline is not being helpful either right now. And part of this, I have a problem with the PFF grades. It's not my favorite thing, particularly like to me, it just seems impossible to know how what everybody's doing, and you're going to put a grade on it, and then everybody's going to share that around, and then we're going to do that. Like, and I'm going to talk about it because it was on my timeline all day. But Lucas Patrick
I knew you were going to Patrick. Oh,
is apparently killing it down in New Orleans, and I saw that James Daniels is apparently killing it over in Pittsburgh. Just putting up these big numbers for the grades. I mean, like you see these guys, they Ryan Bates, like, okay, like Poles loves this Ryan Bates, and he gets in there last week, and I know he's hurt, and maybe that was it. And you're like, oh man, okay, Cole Michelle, well, he's an average center, he's got all this starting experience, he'll be fine. And then you're like, this guy's not good. Like, this guy's
yeah.
terrible. Get him out of here, right? So what is it that's happening here? That it probably does go back to the coaching and what they're asked to do. Like, I didn't watch the whole thing, but Tevin Jenkins had a question posed to him, and he had kind of a weird answer. Like basically like, we're doing what we're asked to do, and
Yeah.
so, it's like, okay, they're not feeling very good about things right now. So, there's some fingers starting to be pointed. I'm sure that people are starting to get upset, but I mean, I gave it to the interior offensive line. I had pretty low expectations after last week. I readjusted where I was at, and they didn't meet those expectations. Like, they don't get the Jeffrey Simmons to Vondre Sweat excuse this week, right? Like the strength of that Texans defensive line is the ends. That Daniil Hunter is a really good football player still. Will Anderson's he was number 3 overall pick a couple years ago. He's a very talented player. Those two guys are good, right? So with Darnell Wright and with Braxton Jones, that's where you worried a little bit coming off the edges. That interior should have had a bounce back game and being able to handle themselves, and they just didn't. And part of it is they're just not doing things that I would expect. I would expect high school linemen to be able to pass off stunts. I would certainly expect college linemen to be able to do that. And it's just, to me, it's completely unacceptable at the professional level to not have that communication and to be able to pick up things that I think are somewhat elementary to offensive line play.
Yeah, you talk about the picking up of stunts, and that's one thing I notice when I do sack watch every week is how often that there's a stunt that's missed, and some of it is just the lineman is being over aggressive. They're not being smart. They're not understanding when a defensive tackle goes away, odds are someone's coming back to me. They're not going to just vacate the space, whether it's going to be an end looping back to me. Maybe it's a late blitzer coming, but there's going to be someone coming in that space that was vacated because they're attacking, especially with the Texans. 40 some odd percent they blitzed. They're bringing heat as much as possible. The Bears will see this again with the Vikings, with Flores. I mean, they'll blitz. They're going to blitz the crap out of Caleb. And I'm worried because this team cannot pick up a stunt. They can't stay home when the blitzes are coming. It's going to be rough, but yeah, I mean, it's the O-line, the interior O-line was rough this week.
Say the least.
2 weeks. 2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, I hope we're not talking about this next week. And if we're talking about it next week, this is like DEFCON 1 situation because, like, it's over. I mean, if they're talking about it against the Colts without DeForest Buckner, who looks like he's hurt, it's over. Like, there's no hope.
There's no options because Ryan Bates on IR.
Right.
Like what do you do? Like if it screws up again, I mean, do you put in Matt Pryor? I mean, I would like to see Matt Pryor. Get Davis out of there, get Pryor in there. I think Adam Hogues had a tweet earlier. He talked about putting Tevin Jenkins back on the right side, putting a new guy at left guard. I mean, I've heard people talk about Kieran Amangaje, seeing what the rookie can do. But look, he was a Yale left tackle, okay, playing in Yale, the Ivy League. Now we're going to ask him to come to the pros and learn a new position at guard. I don't think he's going to play much, if at all, this season. But, I mean, do you put Doug Kramer at center? I mean, this team doesn't have a lot of options. And it's like, look, it's not like Ryan Poles hasn't made moves, right? He has done moves for the O-line during his tenure in Chicago. They just aren't the ones that worked out very well.
Yeah, and why is that? I think that's what we're trying to get at, right?
Yeah.
Is it the coaching? Is it the scheme? Is it what they're asking these guys? Is it like the players themselves? I mean, because again, just watching it, you get the sense that, like you say, over aggressiveness. That you can certainly attribute that to Shelton on a couple of these. You just chasing after a defensive tackle going upfield and vacating the spot, which the defensive end loops around, or a blitzing linebacker loops. Like, your head needs to be on a swivel, man. Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing? Don't chase that. Like, you're playing zone defense basically. You now are responsible for the zone. Get your head moving around and see if anybody's coming. Don't be going after and trying to chase something that's going away from you. You're not going to catch him anyway. So
Yeah.
what are you doing? Right? Like, that's ridiculous. And then there's plays. I'm telling you, man. Like, when we would get chewed out, the coach would say, "Buy a ticket." And say your number, and he'd say, "Buy a ticket." Right now, I wanted to say that to Nate Davis. There was a few times where he was a spectator. He's just getting some cardio in. What are you doing? What are you doing, buddy? Like, you got to do better than that. If you're a professional football player, you got to do better than that. But you got to do better than that when you're making that kind of money, when you're expected to come in and be a solidifying force on that offensive line. It was disgusting. Like, I just, like, absolutely not. It's unacceptable. Ugh. Okay, let's move on to just right before I lose my lunch here. Who'd you have?
I'm going to go on. Of course, can't do O-line. I'm going to go back to D-line. Second year pro, Jermon Dexter. I think he's coming along here, right? He had one tackle, he had a sack, and a tackle for loss. His development seems on track. I know there's some question marks if he can be your long-term answer at 3-tech. I mean, I'm not sure if he'll get to the point where he's playing like a guy like DeForest Buckner if he's at that elite level, but he's on track to be a pretty damn good football player. He could play the nose, he could play the 3. I think he's fine. And I like what I've seen out of Dexter through 2 weeks. I like what I saw out of him during the offseason. I just want to watch him continue growing as a football player because I think there's a chance here for him to be pretty good.
I mean, I want to see more.
Yes.
Right? Like, right now from him, it's the flashes and then long periods of just getting washed out. And so I wonder, where's that intensity on a play-to-play basis? Can he make plays more consistently? Can he be a force, right? It's like, so can he maximize the snaps that he has? Can he, do more with what he's given? But also, like, it feels like he gets washed out a little bit too much. And I think that's going to be an important challenge for him, is to make sure that he's not just like picking his spots, but he's bringing it every play he's in there, and trusting that they're going to have a rotation around him to keep him fresh. But that's just going to be a challenge for a lot of big guys like that, right? Like, you gotta manage your energy and understand how to do that. So that's where I'm at with him. But with the flashes are amazing. Like,
Yeah.
the flashes, you're like, this guy, whoa, okay. But is it there enough?
Find the
That's where we have to
consistency. Yeah. He has to be more
find that
consistent. Yeah.
consistency. For me, it's Jalen Johnson. I mean, we expect great play from him. I think that he delivered that. Again, this defense held the Texans to 19 points. The Texans are a high flying team, and a lot of those points were these long field goals.
Yeah.
So I mean, he played really well. He got a shout out on the broadcast. Like, why would you throw at this guy? Like, why would you do that? Here's the mark of quarterbacks when they're trying to throw at this guy. And so they did. They manipulated the defense in a way, or that they moved their playmakers over to try to get Tyreek Stevenson in coverage, Kyler Gordon in coverage, and they were successful at being able to target mostly Nico Collins. Nico Collins is a really good football player.
Yes.
He's a guy that maybe people didn't know enough about until this game, or Bears fans didn't really know enough about. He's a really good football player. He has been a good football player. He just didn't have a quarterback to throw it to him. And so when Stroud came in, it was like, oh yeah, this is a real guy, right? And so I'm not surprised that he was able to get his, but he didn't really get his against Jalen, because people know that this is the guy that you want to avoid. And if he continues to do that, I mean, there's no reason to say he's not going to reach that goal of being first team All Pro this year.
Yeah, I think it's definitely on the table for him. I thought, it's smart as the opposing team going away from Jalen Johnson. And I thought Tyreek Stevenson had some issues. But again, you talk about Nico Collins. He's really good, And then, of course, you have Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell. That's a very good receiving core. And Jalen did his thing. So I don't think they're going to get to a point where they're going to have him shadow the number one receiver. I think they kind of are content letting him play where he is. But I think at some point, if he's this lockdown, right, you got to realize with your defense now, let's give a little extra help coverage over here. Maybe let him play one defense here, but then over here you're playing a different type of coverage. Plus that helps you disguise things a little bit more too as well. So Jalen Johnson's another really good football player. And this defense, man, it's through 2 weeks, this defense has been lights out.
Yeah, Jordan Rodrigue, who writes for The Athletic and covers the Rams, she talked about this, basically their defensive theory when Aaron Donald was there, about how he was kind of this planet and then Jalen Ramsey was this other planet. And the defense sort of revolved around those two planets. And they really married those two together and knew like how they could work together. And that's really interesting to me. And I think that that's where the Bears have to kind of think about that too, is if teams are just going to avoid Jalen Johnson, well, how do you then create your coverage system? Like, do you move him to try to shadow? Do you try to make sure that you're taking out, some of these teams are only going to have one really good wide receiver, right? But, what happens when you play the Vikings? Jordan Addison's a good football player too, but what happens when you play the Vikings and you've got the best football player or the best wide receiver on the opposite side of the football field? Do you want him running routes against Tyreek Stevenson, who again we like and we think is developing, or do you want to have Jalen Johnson shadow him, right? So are the Bears going to try to move things, or are they going to say this is how we play defense and let the other team dictate terms? I'm just curious to see what happens. The Bears did have some success last night when they started bringing blitzes and when they were able to get a little bit more creative. So is this Eberflus defense at the point where they're willing to move off of some of their base concepts? Are they willing to adapt in terms of an individual game plan because they have this planet, this Jalen Johnson, this star that they need to understand how to best utilize him?
Yeah, I like how you brought it back. I remember that article she wrote. That was a good stuff where she talked about how they built it around him. I mean, Jalen Johnson at that level. I mean, I know he was snubbed from the top 100. He is at that all pro level. So you got a guy like that, build it around him. And if you're comfortable with what you got going on with another player up front, maybe Dexter can become that eventually. I mean, he's not there obviously yet, but Montez Sweat's pretty damn good football player. So I think you move kind of him around, kind of do some things with him. We saw Lovie Smith in that era. He didn't swap his corners, but every now and again, he would realize that he had to, and he would move Charles Tillman to take and shadow Plaxico Burress, for example. So he would do it if he had to. So I think at some point, man, Flus has to look at this and say, look, this gives our best chance to win the game. Stevenson, we like him, but he's not at that level yet. So maybe move Jalen Johnson and kind of try and figure things out and go from there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think that's a good place to stop for today. Any final thoughts as we wrap up this loss to the Texans?
Yeah, it was strange because, like we've said, they're 1-1. It's not how we want to see it. We want the Caleb Williams era to just explode and be this record-setting rookie quarterback because we just saw C.J. Stroud do it a year ago. So that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen very often. They're going to have more downs than ups as a rookie. That's just what happens here. So let's just wait. Like I said, there's no time to panic. As Bears fans, which it's already happening. So some of the victory laps are already happening out there in social media. They knew it all along that Caleb was a bust. I'm like, come on, no one's a bust after 2 games. Get out of here with that crap. It's just ridiculous. So let's wait and see. If this is our same discussion here in December, okay, then maybe there's a problem. But I don't think it will be.
Yeah, these guys are going to twist their ankles on those victory laps they're taking. That's all I'm saying. All right, we'll leave it there. We'll hang around a little bit for some Q&A with the YouTube crowd. For those of you that are listening to this podcast and you want to hang out with us, 6 o'clock Central Time, almost every single Monday, unless the Bears are playing on Monday. Come join us. Come hang out in the chat room, and we will answer your questions. But until next time, thanks for joining us, and bear down.
This is a good one here, right? From
Hope so.
I am Scox. What is the identity of this offense? I was wondering that too. We kind of saw what Walter did in Seattle, what he did over there. And we kind of thought that coming here with all the talent, right? All the great talent the Bears have, you kind of pick and choose what he wants to do each week by matchups, but you still got to have something you hang your hat on, right? The Bears haven't found that out yet. You would have thought it'd be the run game because of how much they gave DeAndre Swift. I mean, they paid him like a top tier tailback, and it just isn't working out. So what do you think is the identity of this offense that they want it to become?
I have no idea. I think that they, I mean, I would have said that they wanted to be an offense that, had a lot of movement. It was comfortable rolling Caleb out. You're able to run the ball with some misdirection. You're able to like get your guys up on the move. But they didn't see any of that, right? Like, so then it's like, okay, well, maybe it's not that. I actually don't really understand, and I think that's part of the problem,
Yeah.
right? Is that I'm not sure that they quite know what's working, what isn't working, and I think that a lot of that got blown up. Everybody's got a plan. It's a Mike Tyson thing, right? Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth,
Yeah.
and I wonder if that is maybe what happened in week one with the interior pressure just kind of blowing some things up, and it's like, okay, well, that it's a whole sections of the playbook that I'm not sure we can access right now. So what is it that we can really pull off here? And not having Keenan Allen, I think that they really wanted to lean on him. That was, I think, game one. They were really showing that he was going to get a lot of targets. He was going to be that safety blanket. I mean, when I watch, why aren't you throwing more of those routes to DJ?
Yeah.
I mean, he's winning constantly, and Rome looks like a rookie wide receiver right now. Like he's definitely not quite where you'd want him to be. So I think you got to lean on Rome, or sorry, you got to lean on DJ a little bit more and just get him going. And I think if you start thinking about it, like they keep saying he needs to play point guard, he needs to get the ball to his playmakers, but you have to like create the space for those guys, and the playmakers are not DeAndre Carter. I mean, I'm not trying to disparage him. He's stepped up. He's played pretty good football, but that's coming into the season. No one was like, we got to get the ball to number 11.
Yeah, I think you look at DJ Moore, and I'm glad you brought DJ Moore up because there's been a lot of talk on social media today, and even last night a little bit because he seemed like he seemed visibly frustrated, and I don't like playing the body language police. I think that's ridiculous. I think as Bears fans, we're kind of over that with the whole Cutler era, but there were times you watch DJ Moore and he does not seem like he seemed upset. I mean, there were a few times he had something to say, and he's always been a guy where when you interview him after the game, he's very measured, right? He takes a pause. He wants to think. I'm going to make sure I say this the right way. And you're like, okay, what's going on in there before he says what he says? So do you think there's nothing there? I mean, DJ Moore was paid a huge amount of money. He obviously loves Chicago. He wants to be in Chicago. He knew it was Caleb Williams' show when he signed. It wasn't like something new to him. He knew it was rookie. So do you think there's anything there with DJ Moore and having any drama here with the team?
No, I mean, I think that he's probably frustrated because I think he had high expectations for what this offense could be, right? And so he wants to produce, he wants to see, but it's not like he's like, get me out of here. I'm
Yeah.
done with this thing. I'm ready to quit. Like the people are so ridiculous with the like, oh, he turned to Tyson Bagent and said, I need you, bro. Yeah, that's really what happened. He
Yeah.
really turned to the backup quarterback and was like, we need you out here in the middle of a game. Get out of here. No, I mean, this is a highly competitive environment.
Yeah.
He's just frustrated. He wants to make plays. And I think it's so close. Like, and I know no one wants to hear that or cares to hear it because close doesn't count, but I just think things are just they're just that close to clicking. And I think it's again, you got a runway here. You've got four bad football teams, potentially bad football teams. Like I don't want to like write them off because it's only 0-2, but I mean the Panthers are really bad. I don't like like the Colts couldn't really do anything on Sunday. They weren't very impressive. I mean I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, and we'll be looking at this like, oh, those teams actually turned out to be pretty good football teams. I think this is a really good runway. They've
Yeah.
got they've got 4 games right here that they can do some damage on, so they can get right and then get to the bye week and take that next step. Come out against Washington, who doesn't look like a very good football team. Like there's a real runway here to get right and figure some stuff out, establish that identity, figure out who you are. Bill Belichick talked about it all the time. September football is weird, and
Yeah.
you're still trying to figure out what kind of football team you are into October, and so it's not weird to me that the Bears offense is still trying to figure things out 2 games in. if it, again, like you said, if we're at the bye week and we're panicking, then that's bad. I'm not like I won't deny if it's after week 6 and we're panicking, then yeah, we can panic. But yeah, I'm just not worried too much yet.
You talk about Bears have a chance in the next few weeks. They had a chance last night too, and that's what Chris is talking here. 137 left in the game. The Bears had the ball back, right? They had a chance to come back and win that game. And I forgot who it was who tweeted it out today, but someone talked about that last play to Roma Dunze where Caleb kind of threw it to nothing. And when you go back and watch it, it's like, well, that's Rome should have ran a comeback there because it was a guy over the top, had a safety over the top. When you see that as a receiver, if you have an option route on, you stop, you come back and run the comeback. Caleb threw the comeback. Rome ran the go. Miscommunications. Second game of the new offense. Rome and Caleb both rookies, not on the same page. Here it is again. You make a couple plays here and there. Who knows what happens, but they were in the game. As bad as it was, and it was bad. I mean, it was a horrible 7-sack performance. As bad as everything was in that game, they had a ball with a chance to go back and win the game there.
Yeah, I mean, when your quarterback, who is known for being an accurate quarterback, throws the ball and it lands 15, 20 yards away from a wide receiver, it wasn't just because he doesn't know what he's like it's a bad throw. Like there's a miscommunication there. Like they read it wrong. Those things will improve over time. I think that that possession was moving, right? They did have that Rome catch. They got the first down. They were around midfield. It seemed like they were going in the right direction. And then Gerald Everett drops a pass. Now it's 2nd and 10. Right? Like there's just this like you got to make the plays. You got to make the plays when you have them in front of you.
Yeah. Andrew Fitzpatrick, we need to take JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba's quote on Waldron more seriously. I believe he had said something along the lines of good luck, when he talked about when they asked, how do you think Waldron will do in Chicago? This was an interview, I think, at Super Bowl week, right? And he kind of made a remark. But, I mean, you talk to – look, the OC, every fan base hates the offensive coordinator. I think that's just kind of what it is. That's who it is. That's the whipping boy for most fans. So, I mean, maybe in a few weeks we'll kind of see how it goes, but I think it's too early to kind of think Waldron's over his head.
We talked about this when the hire was made. Again, we were ready to fire Flus, in the middle of the year last year. It just is what it is. We were on record. We don't like to overreact or get out in front of things. We're not a show that tries to do that. So when we came out and said that was like, a measured opinion. We felt like that was the best decision for the franchise was to go back out and get a new quarterback, pair him with the new quarterback, new coach, and align those timelines together. They didn't do that. They brought Flus back. They got rid of Getsy, which was the right call. You don't want to hand Luke Getsy a new number 1 overall quarterback. But when they did that, and then they ended up getting Shane Waldron, I think we all and a lot of people agreed that was probably about the best they could do. Like this is a coordinator who has professional experience. He has had success. He had success with Geno Smith. JSN, like, good football player. He was a rookie. He didn't get the ball as much as he thought he would. He's playing with 2 really good wide receivers. Waldron probably brought him along like he thought he should. JSN's a good football player. He's going to have a great career. But I'm not convinced that Waldron is better or worse because of what somebody says about him in Seattle. He certainly has a ceiling on him. Like I think Sean McVay is an offensive coordinator, right? And he's a head coach. He's one of the best in the league. Kyle Shanahan is an offensive coordinator and the head coach. There's not a lot of guys that are offensive coordinators that aren't the head coach that are considered to be one of the best offensive play callers, offensive coordinators in the league. That's just not how it works. Ben Johnson right now is probably the best offensive coordinator who's a play caller, who isn't a head coach. But you just don't and he's going to be a head coach once he decides that there's a job out there that he can get that he wants. So you either have to just know that and try to find those guys and keep them when you get them, or you're going to have to live with kind of that second tier And I do think that the Bears probably got about as good as they could have gotten. I think Waldron has the experience and he has that ability, but he's never going to be a guy that's going to. He's just not, or else he would have been a head coach by now, right?
Yeah.
Like that's just not how it works, right? So he's never going to be Sean McVay.
Well, he's had some interviews here and there, and I am old enough to remember when Bears fans were concerned that Shane Waldron would be so great this year, he'd be a head coach somewhere, and it would stunt Caleb's development because now they have to get a new play
They said the
caller.
same thing about Luke Getzey.
Same thing about Luke Gatti. So as these things go, and we're gonna finish on this last one back to Chris here because if you're watching on video, obviously you are because we're on the wrong side here, and it's messing me up too, Chris. It's not just JB. It's
So here's the story. I'm on the road, so this is going to happen a couple more times because I'm on the road a few times this football season. But I'm a guest, and the guest can't be in the host because of the software. So like I'm actually my computer's there, and so I'm running the show, but I have to go through my phone to actually talk because this computer is not very good. I mean, it would be terrible audio. So my phone and the little microphone attachment that I have is at least okay. So I apologize for switching. Believe me, Lester hates it.
yes,
Lester hates it more than you.
Yeah, it's very weird when I'm on this side because I'm never on this side. Even when I'm doing my show and I have a guest on, it's just very strange because and then of course when I'm my own show, I have to run the whole board and stuff, and I'm running the board now just for this section of the show, but JB was running all the early part of the show, so yeah, I'll be happy when we're back to normal.
This is like flipping your tackles or flipping
yes.
your cards. It's like no. You slide me in, but don't flip me to the other side. Really appreciate it, guys. Yeah, I'm gonna go get some dinner here in Portland, and yeah, I don't know.
We'll see you next.
I'm not that worried. I'm not that worried. Like that's where I'm at. 20, whatever hours later, I'm feeling okay.
Bears win next week, and all the disgruntled fans are over. Or now we're all back happy again.
Everybody will be saying the Bears are back.
Bears are back, baby.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. See you later.
Thanks.